Hello, thank you for joining me at Bert's Books. Today I've just been to the Paperback and Pulp Collectors Fair that periodically happens, usually on a Sunday near Russell Square. They use the function room of a hotel near Russell Square, and it's difficult to come away empty-handed. I didn't really go over the top this time. I haven't come away with much. I didn't spend much, but I felt an awful lot of sci-fi, and I'm still not that into. Not largely as a genre. There's exceptions, but do find an awful lot of sci-fi at these things. But I've still come away with some quite good finds. First off, Charnel House by Graham Masterton. Masterton, probably best known to most people as the author of The Manitou. I have been meaning to get to that one, to do an episode on that one for some time. The Manitou, sometimes described as a sort of a Native American equivalent of The Exorcist. It concerns itself with the spirit of a dead, I guess he's a medicine man of some tribe that had been in the New York area, Algonquin maybe. Anyway, he manifests himself in the 20th century. At first, I think from what I remember of it, at first his visage grows out of a knothole in a wardrobe. So when I remember reading that book as a kid, and then every time you looked at a bit of a furniture and there was a sort of feature like a knothole there, you'd start imagining all sorts of evil things kind of emanating from it. But I think this one, the name of it is so familiar. I may have read it back when I was a kid. I don't remember it. It seems again to as if a house is this kind of living, haunted thing. So the sort of theme of sort of slightly inanimate objects becoming the host to some demonic presence, I would guess is a feature of this one as well. Now the novel of the Manitou, I've got that and the sequel titles. He's quite a readable writer, quite humorous writing from what I remember of it. It's a while. I'm going to have to go back and look at the Manitou again at some point soon. But he is one of those writers, I believe, that maintains there's a bit of humour and a bit of kind of self-mockery, I suppose, to the text there. But anyway, I haven't seen a copy of this in a long time. I didn't pay it £6. That doesn't seem too bad. Nice, I don't know how the graphic artist would have been for the cover, but a nice bit of classic, I'm guessing that's 80s or late 70s, classic sort of bit of cover art for the time. And as quite often happens at these things, I'll come away with another youth cult title. Again, it's another biker one, Angels on My Mind by Mick Norman. I'm never sure whether to trust the author's names on this particular genre. It doesn't seem a terribly reliable assumption that is the author's name. Anyway, didn't pay too much. It was about £12, which some of these biker skinhead type things do go for more than that. So I don't know if this is considered as one of the classic ones of the genre. It's definitely of the genre, but there's something just very wishy-washy about the title, Angels on My Mind. So it's not like you've joined the Angels, or you're running with the Angels, or you're having a standing feud with the Angels. They're just on your mind. Well, they're on my mind sometimes, but I don't let it dominate my day. What is the meaning of this kind of odd title? Well, they're very easy to read, incidentally. I mean, just kind of from the train journey home and sort of about half an hour at home, I'm already a third into it. It seems to concern itself with, I think this one's intended as part of a series that also included, there's little footnotes saying see Angels from Hell, also published by New English Library, aghast to learn. So the protagonist of this, Jerry, he's cornered by an old adversary, a copper with a history of a bit of a fixation of going after the Hells Angels. Anyway, this copper his name's Israel, incidentally. This copper has now met his romantic match in what we might describe as a do-gooder psychologist. I'm not a psychiatrist. I'm not entirely sure she's particularly a do-gooder, but anyway, they sort of corner Jerry into this rather kidnappy situation. I think the idea is that Israel's missus then kind of probes at Jerry's mind to understand what makes youth cult delinquents tick. So it's a slightly different tack, I suppose, for, these normally just concern themselves with fighting and shagging and sort of stunt kind of feats of stunt riding thrown in, but this is generally a sort of revenge fantasy written in as the main plot theme. So it takes a slightly different tack. I do suspect it will sort of end up just delivering all the sort of predictable things that these books do. But yeah, for some reason I'm never that into motorbikes but something about these Angels books. Something quite Moorish when you see them at these events. Anyway, and lastly, I did manage to stop on 3. I didn't particularly binge today. I sort of got in and out. This is one I'd had an eye out for in a while. Didn't spend 15 quid. Didn't seem too bad. So this is Ronald Chetwynd Hayes' Monster Club. Now, many of you, I suspect, will be familiar with the film. If you're not, it's one of those, I suppose, the last in a line of those classic British portmanteau or anthology type horrors. The films that would used to come on late at night, and you get 3 or 4 stories bundled into one. So things like Beyond the Grave and Asylum, films like that. This was the kind of tail end of that trend, and it's I kind of think realistically it is a bit of a poor relation to those films. It's I mean, or you tended to get a bit of variation in quality at best with those films. I'm thinking in particular of the Roy Castle one, Dr. Terror's House of Horror. I'm thinking. Correct me if I'm wrong. The one where Peter Cushing has these guys in a train carriage and he's dishing out the tarot cards, telling each one this kind of story of their destiny is crossed by misfortune. So there's Christopher Lee, Roy Castle as the jazz trumpeter, and one or two of those stories. There's one story with this really kind of shitty kind of paper bat on a string, and it's similarly this one, the film is slightly patchy in quality, but it does command a great deal of affection. It does have a bit of a cultish following. It's unusual in that they treated it, I don't know if they were trying to catch a ride on, it wouldn't have been punk music by then, but kind of new wave-ish. I think it was about 1980, so it treated, the premise is that the author himself is walking home late at night. He encounters a sort of rather dapper gentleman who appears to be in some sort of distress. And when Chetwynd Hayes endeavours to help, the guy's fangs sink into his neck. He's a vampire, but he's a sort of gentlemanly vampire played by Vinnie Price. There he is with his fangs in the film. So to pay the guy back for giving him this reviving shot of blood, he hasn't bitten deep enough to make Chetwynd Hayes himself a vampire. He's invited to the hospitality of this gentleman's rather exclusive club, which is the Monster Club, where there's this kind of musical thread to the film. They treat it as it's like a new wave film, but the choices of music in it, much like the stories, I suppose, it's sort of patchy. I mean, on the upside, you do get the pretty things. I mean, they were kind of a previous generation by then. As a stretch to, they would have been an influence undoubtedly on the new wave things, but they were definitely a previous generation's entertainment to that. However, they do get a slot. So between each story, you get this little stage act. Also, these interludes of dub music, which I believe is UB40, who I suppose then were still considered, it's funny with certain bands in the 80s, there's a point where they're kind of considered a bit edgy and up from the underground, and by the middle of the decade they're this kind of, sorry UB40, but a bit of a sort of middle of the road stadium filling proposition. Yeah. Argue that out in the comments. So there's these kind of slightly dubby interludes while Vinnie Price is introducing the next story. The other memorable musical act in it is B.A. Robertson, if you remember him. I mean, he was one of those classic, he had a string of novelty hits around sort of 79 to 1980. Now, almost by definition, a novelty hit tends to be a one-off, but B.A. Robinson kind of didn't go away. And I did at the time find him quite irritating. He had this kind of look about him. If anyone there has been watching these Brookside reruns, right, sort of stay with me. This looks like a swerve, but it's not. If you're up to about 1986, 87, and the house that Terry is sharing with Pat, the ex-nurse. Pat is like this. He's almost a B.A. Robertson clone. He has that classic look of, I suppose, what used to be unkindly described as a banana face. So there's the Jimmy Hill chin and everything. And that kind of, not quite long, but blow-dried out. I don't know how you'd describe it. It's B.A. Robertson here. There's the only way I can describe it. But anyway, he's in this film doing this kind of, it just seems very corny to me, this silly novelty song about vampires. I think he, other than his own hits that he fronted, I think he was kind of in demand as a writer, I believe. So arguably his bigger successes were that he was co-writing things, I believe, for Cliff Richard, amongst others. But anyway, so that sort of gives you an idea of the level of cultural... I just have the feeling every time I watch this film that they were obviously aiming for this sort of level of cultural hitness would be the word, but they just kind of got it rather wrong, other than getting the pretty things in it. So it's kind of an odd watch. It's kind of a bit sort of funny stroke awkward watching these musical interludes, because not much of them really hits the spot. You're not really seeing the pop music in 1979, 1980 was actually quite a fertile place, and they're somehow just missing a bit of an open target there, I suppose. But there are, I think from memory, there are 3 stories to the film, or 3 main, other than the sort of connecting narrative. The story chunks concern themselves with Vinnie Price kind of talk. John Carradine plays Chetwin Hayes, is a venerable old man of the spooky movie by then, but he's talked through the sort of family tree of monsters that will kind of frequent this club. So you get the description you get the explanation of what happens when you splice a ghoul with a human. You get anyway, one of them's a shadmock, which vampires bite, ghosts clank around or go boo, and shadmocks whistle. Right. That's probably the most memorable story in it. There's a certain level of pathos to that story. You do kind of empathise slightly with the monster figure in it, because he's arguably the victim. Well, he is the victim of that particular story. I mean, I was aware it was novel. I think someone has reissued this lately. I'm sure I've seen a sort of contemporary reprint of this. It may even have been Valancourt. I might point out in the comments if you know. But anyway, I hadn't seen an original. This seems to be I haven't taken it out of the plastic. Seems in fairly decent condition. New English Library, of course. So that's quite a nice find. Yeah, I was quite pleased to find that. But I almost picked up, there's always the one that got away at these events, I almost picked up, someone was selling the paperback of Queen Kong from 1976. If you know the reputation of that film, I believe a film even Robin Asquith would like to disown. It's reputed to be just the biggest stinker, but it was novelised. 20 quid, I was not quite. So I might regret turning that one down, but yeah, I didn't do badly. So anyway, thanks for enduring the ramble. You're doing my Sunday thing. I hope everyone's doing okay out there, and hopefully see you soon. Thank you.